Hello. Hello. Don't know why it's so dark back here.
All right, in the meantime, since we're all here, I'm Arthur Marcus, Chair of the Historic Preservation Board for the City of Fort Lauderdale, and I'll call the meeting to order. First, we'll stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we're going to take the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or would like to make a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Tim.
Second.
Seconded by Ashley. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. We do have a quorum, so we have one board member missing. And I guess at this point, we'll go to, pardon?
Else she's starting again.
Well, I think we should have a Sherry. Would you
Yes,
like-
I'm here. Yes.
would you
Hi.
like-
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm under the weather, so I'm over here. Yes, if you're going to speak to the board today, can you please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll start with the first agenda item, which is actually our only agenda item. A certificate of appropriateness for major alterations, case UDP HP 24010. Tricia, would you like to?
Sure. So this certificate of appropriateness application is for the installation of a 6-foot-high privacy fence, gates, and jacuzzi hot tub in the front yard. This property owner did come before the board a few months ago to request an addition to the front facade of her house, and the board approved that COA. Within that application, there was a fence that was on the property, but it didn't have a permit. And she's coming back to request the installation of the fence to comply with all the setback requirements and the site triangle requirements. But is requesting for the fence to be 6 feet in height. And as you know, that does not agree with our design guidelines, which requires, just allows a 3-foot-high fence in the front yard with 30% visibility. The proposal for the fence would include a vehicular gate and a pedestrian gate, both at 6 feet in height. And it would be a privacy style fence, so board on board, so no visibility through it. The applicant is also requesting a jacuzzi style hot tub in the front yard. Our design guidelines also recommend that these types of features would be located in a side or rear yard, not in the front yard. So it is a request to the Historic Preservation Board for your consideration. As far as the criteria is concerned, it does not meet the first two general criteria as far as the relationship of the work to the property and within the historic district, since our design guidelines do not permit this type of installation of a 6-foot-high privacy fence or jacuzzi hot tub in the front yard. And the criterion C, the extent to which the historic, architectural, and archaeological significance is affected. The application partially meets it because the wood as the material for fencing is permitted. Then going through the major alteration criteria, the only one that was found to be applicable was the letter B, the distinguishing original qualities or character of a building. Because the fact that this is a 6-foot-high fence and does not have any visibility and higher than what is allowed in our design guidelines, the application does not meet the criterion. This is also in an archaeologically significant zone. However, it was reviewed previously with the previous application, and our archaeological consultant determined that there's no materials that we're anticipating to find, but we do have a cautionary condition that's included just in case they were to discover something in the event while they're doing ground disturbing work. The material does agree with the material and design guidelines. And then in conclusion, the certificate of appropriateness application for major alterations under case number UDP-HP 24010 located at 1205 Southwest 4th Street does not meet the criteria as outlined in section 472411D3CI of the ULDR and does not meet the criteria as outlined in section 472411D3CII of the ULDR and partially meets the criteria outlined in section 4717 of the ULDR. There are a few conditions outlined in the staff report on page 5 for the consideration of the board. The first condition is limiting the fence height to 3 feet with 30% visibility for the city's historic preservation design guidelines, locating the jacuzzi hot tub within the side or rear yard and not in the front yard. And the third one is related to the archaeological significant zone. So I won't read the whole thing immediately. And then the fourth is that this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
Thank you. Before we go further, we just have to talk about disclosures. Has anyone visited the property?
Site visit.
Site visit? No,
I did last time.
okay.
Site visit.
Drive by? No.
No.
Okay. Tricia, I just have two questions before the owner gets up to speak. What is the existing height of the existing railing now? Do we know?
It's 6 feet.
Oh, it is 6 feet now. Okay. And in terms of the jacuzzi hot tub must be within the side or rear yard. Is there any, since there's no side or rear yard, is there any gesture in the code that would allow it in the front yard if there are no other yards?
It's in the design guidelines where it states that it needs to be in the side or the rear.
Under any
So you would not
circumstances?
put that type of feature in the front yard in a historic district.
Typically, okay. All right, we'll have questions later. Applicant, would you like to address the board?
Can I just make one,
You have to stand up and.
Joseph Brown, on the specifications that Fisher mentioned, she mentioned that there was a 6-foot fence and gate. In our information, we were showing a 52-inch height gate, so it was only
The gate's a little smaller.
yeah,
Sure.
and that is what is currently there.
Okay,
So you can see the house through the entrance.
over the gate.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I ask one other question?
Yeah.
So is what's there, they're trying to get a permit because they didn't have a permit before, or they're replacing it and trying to replace what they have now?
Well, they have to, like, what is there now, we cannot permit because it's not in the correct location. They're also at the corner of an alleyway and a street, so they are required to have a site triangle. So they need to bring everything.
It looks new, so it was incorrectly installed, is that what it is?
Or
It
was
was installed without a permit. So
Okay,
they
that's
never-
what, okay,
yeah.
that's what I was trying to
On
understand.
the
Okay,
previous,
Yes.
okay,
on the previous.
Okay,
okay, all right, gotcha. Thank you.
thank you. Applicant, please introduce yourself.
My name is Jill Adler, and I live at 1205 Southwest 4th Street. Thank you once again for your time. When I stood in front of you 6 months ago asking for approval to build my addition, and I want to thank you for that, I had no idea what lay ahead. When I began looking for a property, I decided on a single-family home rather than a townhome or condo because I wanted a yard for privacy. The moment I walked through the gate of the home, I fell in love with the front yard. I didn't mind that there was no backyard because the front yard offered size, beauty, and privacy that I was looking for. The fact that the home is nestled into the property and is surrounded by 6-foot fencing on all 4 sides sealed the deal for me. I felt safe and secure. I made an offer and they accepted on the spot. That was almost 8 years ago. I was told from the beginning of this process that historical requires me to move the existing unpermanent fence off the property line by 3 feet. But what I was not told until late March is that the fence could only be 36 inches high. And it wasn't until I attended a meeting later with my contractor, architect, and historical department that my people and I were informed that I also have to put it in a 2-car driveway because there isn't one. While I'm not happy with the 2-car driveway requirement, my understanding is that this is non-negotiable. I had no idea. I believed that the gravel swale was my driveway. Again, going back to our first meeting in November, I'm not even sure if what is now the front yard was the original backyard, since the land that could have been the other part of my property was sold off in 1996 and 97. The 36-inch fence requirement would take all of my privacy away, and the driveway would take even more of my yard. Most importantly is the financial strain that these additions have placed on me. I'm out of money and I haven't even broken ground. I have to try to borrow money, which was not part of the plan. If you decide that I can't continue to have a 6-foot fence, strangers can simply step over my gate and take my dog and my outside furnishing. This would be devastating. My front yard, which is used as a backyard because I don't have one, will feel like I'm sitting on the street with complete exposure. I'm trying to comply with regulations to enlarge my home and make it even more beautiful. I've already had a non-permanent $5,000 gazebo removed because of easement, and I will be losing a great deal of my yard and possibly all of my privacy and security. I live alone, I am disabled, and fear now that my yard will be open to theft and burglary. Strangers will have complete access to my property and all my outdoor furnishings. I am also here to request permission to have a 4-person jacuzzi in my front yard. Again, my front yard acts as my backyard. I would like to not only use the jacuzzi for pleasure, but as therapy for my chronic thalamic pain syndrome, which causes burning, numbing, and chronic fatigue on the entire right side of my body. During physical therapy, I found that the jacuzzi beneficial, and I would like to have one in my yard. I received my certificate of appropriateness back in December of the past year, believing I was approved to move forward and be able to obtain a permit. My permit has now been rejected 6 times in 4 months. With this latest news, I have requested to meet with you again to hopefully receive a reasonable and affordable solution. I'm beside myself and scared. I don't know what to do. I'm asking that you allow me to continue using my home with a 6-foot privacy fence that would allow me to add a jacuzzi in my front yard. Sincerely, Jill.
Thank you. Anyone else like to say something? You have to stand at the podium and introduce yourself again.
My name is Joseph Berman. We have some slides and a video that we were presenting along with Ms. Adler's.
Okay.
I think you should have that information.
Those you give me, Trish?
No, I didn't have it.
What? I gave it to
Provided
Simone.
with a video and
I wasn't aware of that. I can go check in our drawer, but I.
Could you,
wasn't
because
aware
I brought it in with,
That was submitted.
I purposely didn't.
Yeah, give me just a
Did you get a black belt? I thought I saw one. That's
That was something else.
Okay. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, how are you?
Are we able to ask questions while we're waiting for next?
Let's We're on hold for a few months.
Can we even discuss any part of it with each other?
No, I think we should wait for Tricia to come back.
Oh, okay.
Question about your photos. Are they similar to what you've handed out?
What I provided was just some comparable properties in the area. I had a PDF of the property appraisers report showing the age of the property
Okay,
and a picture of the front of the property that was from the property appraisers.
well, let's wait a moment and see if she has it.
And it just shows the picture. There's a picture of the fence in the packet, right?
That's it.
That's it. There's a video and a PDF.
You can continue to say what you're gonna say.
Basically, the video is just showing prior to this whole thing starting, the yard. And showing that I don't have a back, it's a front and what I have and all the furniture. I didn't know that I'd end up using it for this.
So all the furniture is in the front.
Everything. Yeah.
There's a PDF also.
Okay,
The PDF, again, is just showing comparable properties in the area. This was taken off of the Broward County Property Appraisals Report. And if you scroll down, I've circled the year that it was originally built and the effective year. And then just to show you the age of that property. And if there were improvements, would be the effective year of that property. For example, that one is 1935 and 2000, but there was some improvements. And then if you scroll down to the next picture, you'll see the picture. Of course, everybody probably knows that house. And if you zoom in on that house, it has a 6-foot fence around the entire property. So this is just showing you some comparable properties in the neighborhood.
but do we know when the fence was built? Was it
See,
built with
again,
the
I'm not
house?
implying,
That's what we don't know.
yes, I'm not implying
Okay.
that this was done.
So you have some other examples?
Yes. There's a dozen properties with similar properties. And again, we're not implying that these fences were done unpermitted or that they might have been done prior to 1992, I think, which is when the historical.
So these are all 6-foot fences
Correct.
in the neighborhood?
Correct. And it's just comparable.
Okay,
Showing you that we're not asking for anything, that we're asking for consideration, given that there are other 6-foot fence properties
okay,
of historical value.
thank you. With that, is there anyone else who'd like to speak from the public? If not, we'll open it up to board comment. And I'm especially interested to hear from the board members from the neighborhood who may have experience on what is typical in the neighborhood, even though we don't know when it was built. But also cognizant of it, I know Richard can probably remember a number of the cases that we've had before us in the neighborhood where, I mean, we've been everywhere from 3, 4, 5 feet, so that's just something to concentrate on as you speak. So Richard, would you like to start?
I mean, I've been very clear on this one. I mean, there is a varying degree of height, 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. My issue with this is this in-kind replacement or seems to be convenient. And when in some cases, you would never have an issue with this fence if not for it being in Silva Bend or historic district, it would not be here. I heard a very emotional presentation and I'm just baffled at this point that we're still here with this. It's like getting to this realization where I was leaving my house a week ago. I was told something as I was walking out of my driveway that I wouldn't have been told if I had a fence. And I was able to handle it, but at the same time, it's frustrating that if people want the privacy right, they're not entitled to. 3 feet does nothing. It does nothing. It's knee height. So if someone wants it for reasons that are privacy reasons, and they have one in place, that's the even more compelling to me. It's already there. So now we're telling them, okay, it's there now, but now you've got to modify, which happens with code all the time where you have to update to certain code standards. In this case, it's kind of discriminating in that they don't want to be able to enjoy what they've had as a privacy concern. And it really, I felt the privacy concern should be utmost. It should be the most prioritized thing. And I'm ready to change the code however we can, because I think it's ridiculous that we can't allow discretion to the property owners, despite the fact that we understand the right of ways of consideration. And that lends itself to the jacuzzi. If we allowed for it, you're not going to see the jacuzzi. So it kind of leaps right into that for me. And I know it's not the most conservative contextual interpretation of the code, but I think the practicality of it is there. And I would be in favor even if it were just for non-therapeutic reasons, just for aesthetic reasons, to allow it to remain, to allow the application to proceed, and to allow the property owner their right to choose to what they want to do with their property.
So I just have a question for you while you're speaking, man.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with you. But in the past, this board has approved 4-foot fences, 5-foot fences probably 6-foot fences too.
Yeah, I can't think
So
of,
how do we set a precedent for the board so that people don't accuse us in the future of being inconsistent in that decision
it's a
making?
great point. I mean, I think it's kind of like a case law argument, right? Case by case. These facts are what they are. I think we take each case as it presents itself and we make a determination. I mean, if we wanted to codify it, we've tried to do that. I'm all in favor of trying to codify it. I just don't know when that opportunity becomes.
It may happen in the comments after this.
Great, you know, but I would be in favor of it. I totally see Tricia's position and staff's position, and I don't think she's making the right interpretation, but there's a level of discretion that needs to be made, and I can't see depriving the owner of replacing their fence, their existing fence, and telling them now you're down to 3 feet because you decided to lift it up. And the driveway thing, I know that's not our jurisdiction, but
No,
that seems interesting as well. Are we allowed to open up the idea of just why there's been a permit rejection for 6 weeks? or I would ask council.
that's Tricia.
I mean, Sherry, do you think it'd be okay to ask why this permit has been rejected 6 times? That sounds a bit intense. I know it's not in front of us on the application, but just out of curiosity to know why that's been the case.
It's a permit for the fence or something else?
I'm not
No.
sure.
Okay, because they have
No,
to,
it's
the
a
code,
new
that's why. So I would assume it's because it's not meeting the code. So,
No,
but,
it's
you know,
for
I'll
the new-
defer to.
The new addition that we had approved.
I would ask the applicant, is the permit due to the fence being lacking compliance, or is it for
Well, we
another
finally
reason?
Just pulled the fence out of the permit.
Right.
Saying that it just will be unpermanent.
Okay.
Honestly, we've been failing over and over again because we haven't been aware of the codes. No, the architect didn't know the ULDR, all of the codes. So he's learning as we're getting it brought back, and they keep trying,
But that's really your architect and engineer's
and the
responsibility.
city, because we didn't.
Right,
They told
Uh,
me.
well-
okay.
They
Well,
told me in the beginning that we needed to move the fence, but none of
Okay.
that stuff.
Sharon?
Yeah, so Shari Wallen, Assistant City Attorney, just for clarification, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So it's your responsibility as the property owner to inform yourself of the law along with whoever is working with you. It's not the city's responsibility to inform you of the law. And there's actually case law on that. So just for clarification for the boards,
Thanks.
So the only comment I would have left is that it would be unbelievably convenient and idealistic to have this neighborhood where you wouldn't need fences for 3-foot fences. But unfortunately, I've been living in the neighborhood for almost 10 years. It has not become one. It hasn't. There's too much pass through within that neighborhood where now that they've commenced construction, they're well through construction on the police station.
Right.
There's a lot of activity, and to deprive ownership or owners the right to have privacy where it would be in place anywhere else in the city, I just take issue with that. That bothers
Okay.
me.
Thanks.
I have a question for Richard.
That's your turn to speak.
Yeah, at Sherry's point, and the way I looked at it coming in was there has to be some level of accountability, buyer beware. You know what you're buying.
Sure.
So you're saying we should retroactively do what she wanted to do when she purchased the property, and yet we have a set of rules that had you investigated, you would have known. So that's where I struggle with your point.
Sure.
Shari's crystal clear. And it seems like the language here, you know, when we use terms like must, I don't know that we have latitude. Do we have latitude that we can wave a magic wand and change these rules?
So Shari Wallen, Assistant City Attorney. So I know the code is very clear, but of course the board is able to do what it pleases. It's just that I have to advise you that that's not what the code says. So,
We've changed it in the past.
Isn't that the whole point of this board though, for us to like look at something subjectively? If it was just black and white, they don't. need us, the staff don't do
Exactly.
it. So I think we have to,
But we look at it from the point of the mission of the board, which is historic preservation,
Right.
not utility of a property.
okay,
I can't think of an application that has come to us exceeding 3 feet that we've denied in recent meetings. I'm trying to think of one. And I don't know, but I also don't know of one that went to 6 feet.
We
Admittedly, I
did one
can't.
on 6 feet.
We did one.
My first meeting, we did a 6 foot. If you guys remember because the guidelines say that, and from the point of the house forward, they have to be 3 feet.
Right.
There was an existing 6 foot fence on the sides of this house, and we approved a 6 foot fence because and part of, at least my rationale behind it was that it was existing, it was there.
Right.
And there was a whole conversation about, can you get higher landscape? That is the only I've been
Well,
on the
let's-
board for maybe about 9-10 months, maybe. And that's the only time I remember, but I do remember that particular.
Perhaps Tricia might remember.
That is the only case. that
Really?
That's the only one I remember since I've been.
Ever.
Since I've been
I
on the
knew it was
board, and
infrequent, so there's one case.
I've
Okay,
been
thanks
the
for
lead.
remembering that.
Yeah, it was just my first meeting and I
So
remember.
what's your feeling about this application?
So I guess I have a couple questions. So the fence looks relatively new. So I kind of alluded to this earlier. If you get granted, just say in a hypothetical world that we said, okay, are you tearing down the fence and getting a new one? Or is it just so you can keep the existing fence? I'm a little confused.
Well, the parts of the fence that you see are new.
Yeah,
When I moved in, the fence was there. There were a couple that had holes and decayed, and I did replace that, but I didn't know that it wasn't, I know, it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that I shouldn't have known. I'm just saying I didn't know.
but the new part of the fence, my question is, are you trying to retrofit and
Yes.
get a permit? So you're not taking it down?
No, I
no.
have to take it and move it in.
It wasn't built to code.
It wasn't.
Oh, you have to
It
move it
wasn't
in.
done-
So,
They're
okay.
saying I have to move it in, but the gentleman that I spoke to said that he could salvage a lot of it, and it's still gonna be over $6,000. But he could,
Salvage the materials.
because it's,
Same
some of it's new, and he
Okay.
would try to.
Okay.
And it's going to meet the code requirements of
right.
3 foot setback. So we're basically demolishing the fence, trying to save what we can,
Right.
going 3 feet and putting it back up.
You're moving it for
Yes.
code, but you're gonna try to keep as much of the materials to save money on materials.
Yeah.
If you were
Yeah.
able to keep
Yeah.
the
Right.
6 feet fence, if not, then you have to get all new materials as well in addition to the move. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So that was one question. The second question that I had is related to the hot tub. So the hot tub looks like
It's affordable,
huh?
Order.
Yeah, so I guess, I don't know, I probably shouldn't say this here. I have a few friends that have those. I'm not aware of anybody ever getting a permit for them. Do you have to have a permit to put because it's movable? It's not like I
Isn't it like
understand
a
if you
little
get.
kiddie pool or something?
It's like a air thing that
Yeah.
you get. It's like, so is that actually have to get a permit if somebody comes to do
So,
that? Or
anything
is it
that
just because
requires
it's in the
historic
front
preservation.
yard?
Yeah, because it's in the front yard and it's part of the historic district, so we have to take that into account.
So-
So if she were to never tell us about it and put it in the side yard, that would totally be kosher, but
Right.
because she is doing this and putting it in the front yard, then that's the question that's before us. So anywhere else in the city, you could get one of these and put it in your side yard or your backyard, nobody.
As far as I know, I'm not the building official.
Okay.
So do you
Okay.
need a water hookup for this?
No, he would fill it with the hose.
It's filled like a hose. Okay.
Yeah.
good.
Okay, so the reason this is before us with this is because she wants to put it in the front yard.
Because it's in the front yard and it's in the historic district.
Because again, she doesn't have a vacuum.
So theoretically, this, not that we would encourage people to do this, theoretically, when the inspector come, you could put it in your side yard and then literally move it to your front yard and there would not really, I mean, it's a mobile.
I can't answer that.
Yeah, okay, all right, I gotcha.
Theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, like in practicality, I'm just, I mean. I struggle with the fence thing because I just, while I don't live there, I have been there before in the neighborhood. And I think, Richard, your point, like the security piece is like a real valid thing. And if I was a homeowner there, I mean, we've had countless people come before us and, single women and couples and people that like, and it's just, that is the number one thing that we often hear is the security thing. And that is very compelling for me. I think I have always been supportive of the 4 foot, and that's been something as a board we have generally done without question. I mean, it's always a question, but generally there's been broad support across the board. This one's hard for me because there is an existing fence that is there. And so like, it is hard for me. And I know you say like I think that's a valid argument that when you buy something, but I bought a house 3 years ago. I never once questioned whether my fence was compliant, or it's just not something, you should understand what your rights are as a homeowner in terms of, especially if you're moving into a historic district, but I think that's just something you inherently think, okay, this is here, I can at least replace it. And so I lean towards being more accommodating, given how I think willing this homeowner has been and trying to historically preserve this property. I know it's not before us now, but we saw the accommodations that she was trying to make it more sea level resistant and all of that. So that's kind of where my headspace is. It's very compelling to me that it's already there and she's simply replacing something, and the gate is shorter to give you a little bit of a view into the house.
Right.
And this is being prompted because of the fact that there is an addition going in, and so everything is reviewed at that time.
Yeah.
As far as the fact, like parking requirements, fencing, everything gets looked at. So that's where all of this is coming from. But originally, there was a site plan that was approved that included the townhouses adjacent, which created a smaller lot for this property. And it was all part of the same site plan that went through the DRC application. And in that site plan, it did show parking on the site. It didn't show a fully enclosed yard. And that was later removed. The parking was removed and the fencing was added. But since we don't have a permit, we don't know the exact time when that happened.
Shane?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I think as we look at these applications, we should take a subjective view, and I'm sympathetic. I live around the corner from this house, for the security reasons that were mentioned earlier. If you look at where the house is situated on the lot, as we heard from the applicant, there's not a backyard. The side yard and the front yard, to me, kind of look like one yard. There's not a fence to separate them, and it sits on the corner of an alley, so it's sort of hard to distinguish other than one's on one side of the house and one's on the front side. But both would be, they run together. The 6-foot fence that's in place, if you look at the townhouse that's on the lot, exactly. But it does look cohesive when you walk down the street there. It's not like there's a break. So I don't think that allowing a 6-foot fence would necessarily look out of place there. And to the point earlier, there's several other 6-foot fences in the neighborhood. I mean, if you just walk around, you'll see a bunch of them. So I don't have an issue with the 6-foot fence, and I mean, the applicant's having to move it back for setback reasons, which is unfortunate, and we could talk about whether that's even, worth the cost, but that doesn't seem to be to our discretion. Then you get to the hot tub. If we approve the fence, I think the hot tub becomes sort of a moot point, and it's inflatable. Like Ashley mentioned, you could move it. We're not talking about an in-ground tub here.
Right.
And the argument to put it in the side yard from the front of the house, like I said, there's not a fence there, so it's, to me, indistinguishable whether it's on the side or in the front from a practical view, perspective. And so I don't have an issue with that either.
Just a quick clarification. These are 2-story townhouses?
Yep.
Okay.
I think they're actually
Maybe three.
3-story, so they're even taller. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the one that is directly to the west, well, I guess all in sort of the back
Right.
abuts this property. And so the one that's on Southwest Fourth there, it's their side yard that runs into her front yard.
Yeah. I can get that on the site.
Yeah, so they have a 6-foot fence, and just the way their house is situated.
Oh, okay. Okay,
It looks cohesive to me.
Yeah. Ashley,
Ashley?
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
Sonia.
Sonia.
Yeah, so, I recall when this application, well, not this application, but when the applicant came before us in December, and there was that question about whether the front yard was the backyard and vice versa. So by our definition today, we're calling it the front yard, but perhaps when it was originally built, it may have been the backyard. And we don't know the answer to that, I believe.
We do have documentation from Sanborn maps that show that as the front yard. It was oriented towards Ford.
That originally it was a,
In staff's opinion, it's not a question of whether or not it's the front or the backyard. It's the front yard according to the Sanborn maps.
okay. For me, I would be inclined to approve this, especially because, or specifically because of this section 47-24.11 D3CI. D, denial of a certificate of appropriateness. In fact, would deprive the property owner of all reasonable beneficial use of the property. For her, this is a significant piece of the property. The reason she bought it, it was there originally. If I had any power, I would say she wouldn't even have to change the setback. It's, the purpose of our board, I believe, is historic preservation, but it's to incentivize historic preservation based on guidelines. It's not to follow the rule of law 100% of the time. It is subjective. And I think it should be subjective based on each application that comes before us. And then regarding the hot tub, if we did approve as a board, the fence as a 6-foot fence, then I think I would automatically want to approve the hot tub since it wouldn't be seen by the street anyways.
Thanks. Tim?
Okay. I'm in agreement with Richard's explanation. I think it's important that we take everything on a case-by-case basis. And I'm saying that so that when we have our discussion, we don't try to establish a height. But I mean, I've lived in town now 51 years. And I've lived in 3 different homes and I have never had a home without a fence. And it makes me sleep good at night. I have pets. I'm a dad when my daughter was little. And it doesn't matter what neighborhood you live in. In today's world, we need security and safety and peace of mind. Things may have been different in the 30s when they built that house. And, who knows, maybe people sat on their front porch back there with their rifles and a corncob pipe. But I don't see what's being asked for as being outrageous or unfair. I think it's appropriate and it's a practical request. As far as the hot tub goes, it's a portable hot tub. I don't see, there's code and then there's criteria. The criteria for the historic preservation does not allow that in the front yard. But I don't know if that means portable or permanent or whatever, but I think that's a whole nother discussion. I think it's easy enough to say, if I was going to say this, I'd say, I'm in favor of this fence and do what you want with your hot tub and you get your fence up. I don't know. I just want to, I respect the Historic Preservation Board's purpose as far as preserving historic value and that nothing's changing to the home. Nothing's changing to the design of the home for this meeting. We're only talking about a 6-foot fence and a portable hot tub. So for today's meeting, a 6-foot fence for me is not an unfair ask. I would want that if I lived in that neighborhood, especially if I was to move there with my daughter now and my dog. So I will be voting in favor of this request.
Thanks. Well, I have a different take on this, but I end up at the same place that most of you do. I think this applicant has 2 hardships against her in terms of this property. Number one is, I think the approval by the city years ago of the townhouses next to the property sort of impinged on, so to speak, the property and made it so that there is no other usable space. And I would like to see in our discussion that when a property such as this, without a side yard, without a rear yard, but only a so-called front yard, which it is, that because of the hardship of the property, the inherent nature of the property, that it would be okay to use the front yard for whatever uses one might typically put in the side yard or the rear yard. So I have no problem with this because I think this problem was, is inherent to the property. And in other jurisdictions would be called a hardship. So the second thing about the fence is these are 3-story townhouses with, as I understood it, a 6-foot fence around the townhouses. I can't imagine that this fence should be any less because in terms of a cohesive neighborhood, anything you put up to a 3-story townhouse, it's going to look small anyway. But I would rather see the street line of the 6-foot fence, which already goes around the block, continued here, and I think it's a good reason to do that. So I would be in favor of both of these.
I just want to make one other point as well. When we've encouraged people, or we always talk about landscape, there's now 20-foot clusias around this neighborhood. So if the idea is to basically create visibility, it is backfired, to be honest with you. You cannot see these houses anymore. And I don't know whether that's code, not code, but they're everywhere.
But that's everywhere. It is, but.
But point being,
yes.
if the right of way and visibility to the front elevation of the home is at the center of what this is all about, right? In terms of this
Right.
particular section, by not permitting for this type of fence or not recommending, and I think is the word the code uses, not recommending it. It has created blockades. You now
Right.
have, they might be live walls, but they're 15, 20-foot walls that exist. I walk my dog around them all the time. You cannot see the house. They're over the peak of the roof in some cases. So, I mean, I don't know when we reconcile it in the code, but, yeah, that is what.
Well, let's wait till our next discussion.
Sure.
You have time to make recommendations. Are there any other comments or questions, or would someone like to make a motion?
I just wanted to clarify something. So the criteria in the code is actually objective, meaning that you're applying the same criteria to every single application. So the facts, of course, you're looking at it as a case-by-case basis, but the board is supposed to be objective. Just like how you have jury instructions, it's the same jury instructions for the type of case. So just remember that it's objective, not subjective. So just clarifying that. Thanks.
Thanks.
I'll make a motion.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve with conditions the resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP HP 24010 located at 1205 Southwest 4th Street. Based on the facts discussed here today from the applicant and is subject to the following conditions. Basically, number 3, the property is located in an archaeological significant zone, so making sure that condition is included and that the applicant is subject to approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
So you're including 3 and 4.
Correct.
I'll second.
Seconded by Richard. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No,
On 1 no. The motion carries. Congratulations. Good luck with everything.
Thank you all so much.
So next we have the communications at the city commission. Do we have any? One quick thing is I actually heard on the radio coming down here that tomorrow night, the city commission is holding the Pier 66 designation hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's happening with the Astro convertibles?
It was deferred to December third.
And what's going on with that? Why so long?
At the request of the property owner.
Okay. But they're still intending to,
Well, the intention of designation was coming from the Historic Preservation Board.
I know,
So, but they do have to appear at some point on the city commission agenda, but they have kept requesting for deferrals.
What property is this?
The Castro Convertibles building, which is
Ferguson's.
Federal Highway,
North
well,
Federal
north of
Highway.
Sunrise.
Okay, and it's, when did you say? I'm sorry,
December 3rd, the first
Deep.
December.
Oh, wow, okay.
And that came before the board.
No, it hasn't.
It
Oh,
did
never
come
came.
before the board.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, okay, right.
Mhm.
It was a nominated designation at the time by the board, right?
Yeah,
The board nominated for it to be historically
Designated.
designated. There was a notice issue. So they claimed they never received notice. We got into a whole civil procedure discussion. And then they've been delaying it ever since, it seems
So
like.
they did
And I think it's
agree to, or they didn't agree?
No.
Then it,
I think so.
okay.
And so are you two the only ones that were on the board at the time? Does anybody else think you were on the board too?
Yeah, it was just kind of like with, the board had made the recommendation that it could qualify as a historic, or we designate it, and then the process was to do the mail order and a lot of notices, no response. Try again, no response, try again, then there was just some sort of legal representation and
Yeah.
communication
Yeah,
to the city attorney's office and to the board. I think Tricia, right, you had some communication with them or never?
I had sent them the notices on certified mail that's required by the code.
But you never heard directly from them?
I think we had one meeting at some point in time.
So it's kind of been a push and pull to get them to the table, and this is December 3rd would be hopefully the first time for everybody to sit down and say, this is what we want to do. What do you think?
Is that what it is, a commission?
No, it's a public hearing for the consideration from the city commission to designate the property.
Right. Public hearing.
The public hearing.
So they need to be there if they choose to be there.
Yes, they would need,
But the property owner opposes it. correct?
they have not stated.
we think,
I don't know either way.
Tricia, that'd be 2 readings though for that to be approved, or it's all,
No.
it's a- no?
One, it's a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Board and then an ultimate approval by the city commission.
All right, so secondly, we have a discussion on sailboat ban.
We have Blake here to give a presentation.
Great.
Everybody.
Hello.
While you guys are loading that up. Okay, so my name is Blake McGinley. I'm on the Sailboat Bend Civic Association Master Plan Committee. All right. And, what we're doing in Sailboat Bend is we're embarking on this master plan process, right? And the reason that we're doing it is, is if the neighborhood does not act to protect the cultural heritage, the historic, nature of our neighborhood, if we don't act, we're gonna be acted upon by developers. And so that's literally what's happening now is we don't really have the tools to be able to maintain the historic character of the neighborhood. And we feel like being able to codify some of the needs of the neighborhood would will help the neighborhood in the long run. So, historic and resident concerns, they just don't carry a lot of weight at City Hall, unfortunately, up against a paid lawyer, real estate attorney. And so, what Sailboat Bend Civic Association is trying to do is we're trying to create a tent pole to support the aspirations of the community, right? And so a master plan is the mechanism through which the residents, that's how this policy gets actually codified. So a master plan is a great opportunity for the historic community and the residents to band together and let their intent know. Does that make sense?
Yep.
You know, as opposed to, again, a real estate attorney being hired by a developer to push a certain aspect. So we've received universal support from commissioners, from the staff, from the residences. And, you know, now we're lobbying for funding. And the way that we lobby for this funding is to justify the municipal investment by demonstrating support. And so I hesitate for anyone to get too drawn into specific ideas that you would put in the master plan yet. And we're really focusing on creating that structure, getting it funded, making sure everybody's aware of what we're doing. And creating and conveying to the commissioners that there is support, that this is a good idea. And then once it gets funded, we turn this over to qualified professionals that have the ability to take the temperature of all the different organizations and put a plan together. Does that make sense? And so that's really all I have. I mean, we can flip through this, but to be honest with you, this is really just to show the commissioners that Sailboat Bend, that our civic association is unified and we have good ideas and we're motivated. And that's,
So this is just a broad brush, so to speak. You're not taking a position on a side yard or front yard or the height of the fence yet.
100%. And the reason is those discussions are super important, but they need to be done within a framework where everyone feels like they've been heard, everyone has an opportunity. And so that's why we're letting the professionals do that.
Good.
So the civic association, all we're really trying to do is convince the city to invest, you know, by, and I guess to get into specifics, where we're at now is, the recommendation was to break it into two pieces, a vision plan and a master. So a vision plan is really like that first step, make sure we can all get along, make sure we can make that list. And that's really a small bite. And then there's the master plan. So then we would take those vision ideas and the master plan is literally creating the steps to implement them. And
So who's doing the master plan?
that would be like.
Without the consultant.
That would be like a planner, like EDSA
Right.
or you know, a larger plan. And unfortunately, they can be a little expensive. So that's why we thought it was important to reach out to everyone. And to be totally honest, right now, I don't really have a call of action yet for you guys. But what I would like is to start that thought process. You know, start thinking about what a master plan for Sailboat Bend would really mean relative to the historic groups. And if you're friendly with your commissioners, I mean, definitely don't hesitate, bring it up and say, hey, we're excited about this master plan idea. We think it's a good idea.
I'm glad you're going this route with a professional planner, because a number of years ago, I think Tim was also on the board. We had an open session, Patricia, for the neighborhood. We were talking about the Sailboat Bend guidelines or some potential changes. And I quickly realized we are not those experts.
You know, so my day job, I'm an architect and I do design for country clubhouses. So, you know, thousands of people in these clubs. And so you can imagine, you get a couple hundred people in a room talking about $60 million worth of improvements. If you don't have a structure, it gets out of control.
Right.
So, but does anyone have any questions? Because we're really excited. We've really done a lot of work. So if you had anything in particular, you can.
Yeah, I have a question. Would you be adding to this master plan any potential incentives or ideas on how to preserve historic, for instance, transfer development rights? Would you be identifying how many units are available and how someone could go about selling them or?
I think that's a good idea. What I would like to kind of cherry pick out of that question is the financial aspect of it. So when we were talking to city staff, one of my major points was Sailboat Bend and by extension, the historic elements of Seville Bend, they need to be fiscally sound. And so the city is not in a position to just give money away to protect historic homes. And most of the time residents aren't able. And so part of that master plan will be to create the infrastructure to allow people to access funds and be part of different economic development incentives that support historic structures. Does that make sense? I mean, so an example would be, I'm going out on a limb here, would be like a tax increment financing district where, you know, there's money allocated for specific things. And then that master plan would help organize those and codify them.
So is that where this is headed, to create a TIF district?
Not specifically, but that is one, I mean, that's one of the things we were excited about when we talked to Chris Cooper and Trish that was there. Was that he was very open, like, are we talking about rezoning? Are we talking about, you know, all the options were on the table with the understanding that the fundamental core idea was to retain the historic character of the neighborhood. Because Glassman had very big ideas of what he wanted Seville Bend to be. He wanted it to be more of a destination historically. Like, he really wanted to reinforce that. And I had to come back to him and say, that's really expensive. And so if we can find a way, not only for the city, but for the residents, but if we can find a way to generate those funds and create an infrastructure that supports it. Yeah.
When did you start on this process, and what are the likelihood that you will get funding? And if you do get funding, what's the horizon for?
About a year ago, we started stirring the pot within the Seville Bend Civic Association. We kind of got our stuff together. And then January 16th, we met with Trish and Chris Cooper and a bunch of other folks at staff to kind of make sure that, you know, that we weren't barking up the wrong tree. And then I want to say a couple months after that, we met with Steve Glassman. You know, he's very excited about the process. And so right now, we're pushing for and Trish, can you help me? Do you know what the name of that motion would be? Will we ask for that vision plan money?
The name of the motion?
Yeah, like what that would, there's gotta be a term for it,
I'm not sure.
but you follow what I'm saying. So our first step will be to ask the commission to fund the vision plan, which I'm gonna be totally honest with you, is around $50,000. We feel like that can be executed from the discretionary funds. But we understand that the master plan is going to be a lot more expensive. And so we're going to go through the municipal budgeting process for that. So to answer your question, we want to get the vision plan off within the next couple months, as soon as we can get it approved. We understand the master plan will have to wait for municipal funding, which is 2021. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I love the way you're going about it. I think as Arthur said, that's good stuff.
Well, we're trying to do it the right way. And I find myself frustrated with the speed of it, but then we have to understand that's part of government, right? It's to slow things down and make sure we all agree. Yeah.
This is fast for government.
Well, we're excited.
And then, so say a master plan gets done, the next step in that course of action would be to give the city to fund the master plan.
Yeah, so in the next budget cycle, we're going to request funding, like a specific line item for a master plan for Seville Bend. And so once that's funded, it'll take 8 to 12 months. So literally do the master plan start to finish. And then the deliverable for the master plan is literally just, you know, a binder of recommendations. And then I imagine that at that point, the city goes through and says, okay, we agree with these rezonings, we agree with this, whether it would be a PUD or a TIF or an enterprise zone or whatever it is, they would say, okay, we think it's a good idea. Let's start.
And then with the idea being that at the end of the day, and everything's done, that Settle Bend looks more like a cohesive neighborhood, and we can tell it's historic when we pull up to it and drive in
100%.
versus the way it is now.
And to the fiscal thing though, I look at neighborhoods like Rio Vista and some of those that are more mature and really kind of have their stuff together a little bit. And it's because they're fiscally sound, they can almost run their own thing. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping we can do for Silver Bend with a historic context to say, not only do we cherish our historic culture, but we put the mechanisms in place to make sure it gets funded, to make sure it's maintained, to make sure, because unfortunately, the city's not going to do that for us. And so I think that that's one thing Chris Cooper really liked about it, was that we were ready to take on those mechanisms that are required to maintain these historic structures. Because right now, they're just slowly. And I've got one last thing for you that I'm kind of excited about. So I talked to the dean of the school architecture at FAU, and his main focus is research. And so we're really excited about bringing his group in and having those kids kind of, his idea, which I thought was great, is he's like, well, if you're going to spend a lot of money on research with EDSA or another planning company, our kids could do the research and give it to the planners. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing. We're looking for members of the community. I can talk about this all day.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tricia, anything else? No. Okay, somebody want to call to close the meeting? Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Hallelujah.
Second.
That's second. We're all in favor. Okay.
Bye.
Hope you feel better.
Thank you. Bye.